During this podcast, there are some brief descriptions of domestic violence. Viewer discretion advised.
We have all had painful events in our lives that can lead to depression, anxiety, addiction, or broken relationships. But here's a secret. It is not about what happened to us that causes suffering. It's the stories we believe about ourselves. Join us as we shine light on how to rewrite our stories, avoid the shadows of shame, and travel along the pathway to joy, love, and connection. It's the Finding Peace podcast with your host, Amazon best-selling author, Troy L. Love.
Today's podcast is going to be a little bit different because I have an amazing guy with me that I'm going to introduce you to in just a minute. Several months ago, some things started to happen in my life where I felt like I really needed to connect with the warrior inside of me. I'm a pretty good lover. I have a lot of lover energy inside, but I really have felt like I needed to work on connecting with the warrior energy. And if you've listened to the podcast, you've heard my stories of being chased by the bullies, growing up in a home where there was a lot of domestic violence, and so anger and power really, really scared me a lot. But lately, because of some of the things that have been going on in my life, I really felt like I needed to tap into that. So I was looking around at different places to go, and it was recommended to me that I try martial arts. So I didn't know where to go. A lot of the schools in Yuma have been closed because of COVID, and a lot of them work in the evenings, which is like the time that I have with my family. So it was really trying to figure out what in the world I was going to do. The universe opened up an opportunity for me to be able to spend some time with David Perez, and you get to meet him in just a minute. He's a pretty amazing dude. So I would show up on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings, and I'd step onto that Taekwondo mat feeling completely out of my element, feeling completely uncomfortable, scared to death, totally having the shadows of shame showing up, and the judge telling me I'm going to look like an idiot and I'm going to do it wrong. And he started to work with me, and he started to teach me how to punch. And as we started to do that, I was so excited. And one morning, he pulls out this piece of wood, and he says, "We're going to do something today." And he puts it down on his little stand that he uses with his students. And I know what's happening. I'm supposed to break this piece of wood with my hand. And he says to me, "This is your current challenge. This represents the current challenge that is going on in your life." And David doesn't really know the challenges that I have going on in my life, but they're pretty intense. So when he said that, something ignited inside of me, something electrified inside of me. And he said, and then he showed me what I needed to do. And he said, it's mind over matter. He said that you have to be able to believe that you can conquer these challenges, that you can do it. And so he taught me, and then I did the chop, and the wood broke, and it was like the most empowering feeling ever. I was so excited. I took the wood home, and I put it in a shadow box, and now it's hanging up in my office with a plaque that says my current challenge. And for me, it's a representation of it's mind over matter. The things that we struggle with, the things that we are facing, sometimes that shame convinces us that we can't do it, that we're not powerful enough, that we're not strong enough, that it's never going to get any better. But it's a mind game, and if we can really tap into our inner warrior, our inner lover, the wisdom that we have inside of us, we can break that. We can break that board. We can overcome those current challenges. As he did that, I thought, you know what? I would love to have David join me today. And so I'd like to introduce you to David. David is my Sifu, the owner of Yuma Taekwondo, and I am really excited to have you here.
Well, I appreciate it, Troy. And you sound an amazing guy, but, everybody teaches me something every day. And, you are truly amazing. You help me bring out the right words, bring out the right things for you. And it makes me more peaceful at the end of the day. So it's pretty awesome, man. So I really appreciate you inviting me on this. Like, as I told you, though, when we're really sure this is your, as we call it, stomping ground.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited. So thank you.
You are welcome. So, David is a bald, redheaded guy, right? I'm imagining you were redhead once when you were a little boy. And it's awesome. I love having you here. So, David, how in the world did you get into the world of Taekwondo? What led you to be where you're at today?
I always tell everybody, and this is where it starts from, but I was about 5 years old, and I was homesick, and at the time we weren't allowed to watch TV. None of that stuff. I was raised on a farm. Some people say farm raised. I was bar raised, and I'll tell you why here in a minute, because it kind of ties into everything. But yeah, I really was bar raised. But anyhow, when I was at school one time, I was just feeling sick, and my mom got called, and she was pretty upset that I had to go home and stay home because I was sick. And I actually got to watch TV, and there was this guy flying across the screen and yelling like a maniac. He's like, ah, and it caught my attention. And that individual, which I didn't know at that time, was Bruce Lee. So I thought that was really, really neat. But that's all I know. All I knew. So here I was on the couch, not feeling good at all. Just like a little kid, right? You're sick, you want your mom, you want love, you want care. And so you kind of like play the part, it kind of almost makes you feel worse, waiting for somebody to bring you soup, something to help you feel better. Yeah. And nobody was there. Mom's at work, dad's at the bar, all this other stuff going on in my life. And so I got up off the couch, and I'm trying to jump, and I'm trying to kick, and I feel like a complete ninja at this point, without knowing what a ninja was at that time. And so all of a sudden I heard the car door boom, and oh man, I get up and went on the couch, covered my face up. My mom comes in, and she's like, I know you're faking it. What are you doing? You were up, weren't you? And she just, upset. But I was scared. I was scared out of my mind. And I was like, no, I wasn't doing nothing. But at the same time she's talking to me, I hear Bruce Lee still on the TV screaming and kicking. And it was really exciting. It was really hard for me to play sick now, because now I'm excited. And so anyways, I was like, oh, I want to do that, and she's like, you're out of your mind, and so that was kind of like a shot of big disappointment. I'm like, all right, well, okay, fine, forget it. She's like, well, your brother did baseball. She goes, you do baseball for 2 years, and then we'll think about it. So that gave me some kind of hope, and my brother did. He was always out in the yard throwing the ball and at me and everything else like that. So it was pretty cool, right? But I played baseball. And, time, obviously 5 years old, I was playing T-ball or whatever it was. Wasn't really T-ball. It was a baseball, but, slow pitch type deal. And the coach was a really cool guy. But I enjoyed going to practice just because there was positive. The coach was yelling, but it wasn't a scary kind of yell, and it wasn't an aggressive kind of yell. It was the kind of yell where it got my attention, but hey, I wasn't home, so it was a good thing. Yeah. And so anyways, I played for about 2 years until I was 7 years old, and I never forgot. I just didn't forget. I stuck with baseball. I got hit in the face with the baseball, and all these things going on in my life at the time, amongst all the family issues that were going on inside the home and outside. And so anyways, I went to my mom. I'm like, all right, I did 2 years, I'm 7 years old. I'm going to do martial arts, because at that time I knew the word martial arts, so that was pretty cool. Or karate. That's what it was. It was like a universal term, karate. And so she takes me down. His name was Master Paul Siren. This was in Missouri. And it was a brick building, old school, type style building. It still stands today. And anyhow, it was scary. I remember her pulling me up, and I thought, oh man, we're doing this. And I see all these trophies, and I see this guy on the mirror, and he's just like looking mean, it's kind of like what I can probably compare it to is like the Cobra Kai picture on Facebook or YouTube, and it was really intimidating. I walked in, and this guy's yelling, and he's scary. He's just really intimidating. He's muscular. He's big. I'm 7 years old. I think he's a giant at this point in time. I'm probably taller than him now. But, at the time, I was thinking he was tall. So I remember my mom introduced me. She wasn't allowed to be in there. He didn't let any of the parents in there. And I know why now. But, and anyways, he sets me down. And he's like, well, you want to do jiu-jitsu? It was jiu-jitsu. And I was just like, learn how to fight, you know. At the time, I'd already been hit by 2x4s and belt buckles and things like that in my life. So I always wanted to protect myself. And so I figured this is the guy that's going to teach me, you know. He sets me down on this machine, and it's a splits machine. And he cranks this thing and makes me do the splits, and I'm in tears. And I mean, I remember just tearing. I'm crying. Couldn't even control it. It was just hurting so bad. And he left me there the whole class. The class duration time at that time were 2-hour classes. So being in class, that was my first day. That was my introduction. Yeah, that was my introduction to martial arts. Gosh, so it wasn't a good introduction by any means.
Well, I'm so glad you didn't do that to me.
But it was a different kind of pain. It wasn't the kind of pain that was brought on by, you know, physical force. You know, really, it was just a different kind of pain. So I didn't know how to deal with it. I knew how to deal with the rest of the pain, but not that one. So in the next class, I was really scared. I was intimidated. I almost wanted to tell Mom, but I knew, you know, I wanted to do it so bad. And if I would have said something, she would just pull me out, and it would have been my opportunity gone. And I go in there next class. The next class, he stands me in front of everybody. He lines up everybody. They're against the wall. Kids are breaking bricks. And the kids. And I was like looking at this going, holy smokes, man. Like, I'm going to have to break that. You know, like, forget it. But second day, he stands me in front. He goes, put your hands up. And I remember putting my hands up. He goes, open your hands. And I opened my hands. And he's like, now block. And he just went at me. And he just started to swing and hit and kicking. And I ran backwards. I didn't know what to do. And he made me do it over and over and over again until I wasn't really running backwards. I was just basically taking these hits and kicks and things. Fast forward 2 years, because that's exactly the way it was. Fast forward 2 years, my mom pulls me up for class, and he's coming out in handcuffs. And there's this kid on the sideline, you know, holding his eye and things. So he was arrested, obviously, you know, and that was the end of jiu-jitsu. But during all this time, you know, I was dealing with my own personal struggles, man, you know. From the very beginning, you know, I mean, like I said, I was bar raised, you know. I mean, from the very first thoughts I had or first memories I had, I was sitting on a bar stool playing shuffleboard. You know, that's just the way it was. That's my dad's life. My dad would bring me to the bar every day and sit me on the stool. I knew the owner. Her name was Lucille Ball, like the actress. Oh, wow. Yeah, so I never forgot that because of the actress, Lucille Ball. But, you know, she was a short person, a very short person. In fact, I thought she was just really mean woman when we got there, and she's like, hey, you know, I had this rough voice, all these rings over her hands, and I wonder why, because, you know, bar scene's pretty rough, right? Especially, you know, in the late 70s, you know, early 80s, in Missouri of all places. So anyways, one time this fight broke out, and I'm sitting there on the bar stool, and this is before martial arts or any of that stuff, you know, and it was a scary world, you know, to live in. Everybody was pretty cool to me. I'm a kid. They're not going to hurt me. You know, so it was one of those things where all of a sudden she starts walking down this bar and she disappears. Next thing I know, she comes around the corner, and all I was like related to at the time was a kid. I was like, oh my goodness, she's a kid like me, you know, but she wasn't. She was a grown adult, and she had this bat, and she had all these rings, and they'd stop. You know, she'd hit that bar stool with that bat, and everybody'd stop fighting. They had that level of respect in a sense, and then she would go around back and disappear, and then she'd climb back up, and she'd be up on her bar serving alcohol and things like that. I think I always say I was on the pig's feet diet, you know, because bars at that time would have pickled pig's feet on the counter. They would have hot sausages, type of eggs and things like that people aren't used to here, right. and weren't. The first time I ate pickled eggs, one of my friends was like, what is that? You know, it's gross. And it probably is gross in some sense, but you got to think I'm 5 years old, probably 6 years old, and that's what I'm eating, man. You know, I mean, just the way life was, right? My dad sold cigarettes. That's called a Pall Mall cigarette stand. Pall Mall's, you know, old style cigarette. And I remember, you know, because he had to take me everywhere. My mom was a worker. She was a workaholic. My dad was an alcoholic. You know, so it wasn't a really good mix. But I remember sitting down the whole shift, man, my whole dad's shift, on the floorboard of this stand. It was like a circus booth is what it was. And he'd sell cigarettes. And then he'd just give me bubble gum. He'd sell cigarettes, give me bubble gum. So I was on the bubble gum diet when I was with him at the cigarette stand. But here nor there, I just grew up around a lot of violence. You know, my dad was an alcoholic, like I said. You know, I couldn't count on... I couldn't count the number of times that even me at a young age, 6 years old, helping dragging him in the house. with my brother, my mom, and my sisters, and all this other stuff. And, you know, the yelling, the fighting, and, you know, the arguing, and you know, I mean, knockout, drag out kind of fights you just don't want to walk out of your room to discover, you know. It was one of those things. But at the same time, you know, I mean, I just remember getting, you know, sometimes I feel like it was probably an accident. You know, I just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And, you know, like, you know, getting hit by a 2x4, like I think I was, I think I told you, but getting hit by the 2x4, my sister comes running in, she hides behind me, I'm the guy, but yeah, she's 2 years older than I am. And I remember my dad just, you know, mad, angry, drunk, and I remember him just swinging his 2x4, and she ducks and it hits me right in the head. And I just remember thinking, what was that? Like, what is this? What's going on in my life? Similar situations like that kept reoccurring. I think my sister had it out for me. I don't think she appreciated me like people probably appreciate me now. But every time it seemed like she was like run to me like a magnet, and just didn't go the way that I would probably wanted it to go, you know. And then later on, I'd say the last, so I was 9 years old when this happened. It was a very life-changing moment. I was 9 years old. I come home, and from jiu-jitsu. This is before one of my last classes. And my father, he's at the table. I remember like it was yesterday. He's got a can of Budweiser, sitting at the table, and he's like, "What'd you learn today?" And I remember thinking, "Oh man," I was like, "I learned this." You know, I remember putting my hands open, my fingers open. And he's like, "Hit me," you know. And I'm thinking, "Oh man, here's my dad telling me to hit him." I know he's hit me before. If I don't listen to him, I know I'm going to get it. You know, I knew I was going to get it. He was just in that mood, and so I opened my hand, and I remember hitting him with an open hand, you know, right in the arm. And then I just remember feeling this excruciating pain in my face. And but anyways, it was pretty crazy. So the next hit, I remember waking up. I don't remember hitting the kitchen sink on the back of my head. I remember the face hit, but I don't remember, because I remember seeing a hand come across, and but I don't remember hitting my head on the kitchen sink. But that happened. So from that point, from 9 to 19, I had seizures, man. I was diagnosed with epilepsy due to the impact, you know, from getting hit like that. And so the last memory of my dad, that was one of the last ones. The very last one, I remember walking in. I heard a lot of yelling, and I was wondering what my mom was doing. I wasn't sure what she was doing. I'm young, you know, I'm 9 years old. I don't know what's going on, or almost 10 now. I was 9.5 to be exact, because I was 9.5 when I came down here to Yuma, Arizona. But I'm sitting there, and all this yelling going on, and I see these little bags kind of packed and gathered. You know, my mom's going back and forth to the van, and I'm thinking, man, what is going on? Next thing I know, you know, there's yelling going on. Everybody get out of the house. And it was like, what? Like, everybody get out of the house. Well, what's going on? You know, at this time, I think jiu-jitsu and being brave and getting my butt kicked in class gave me, I'd say a false confidence in a way, but it also gave me courage enough to stand still now and not run from anything. Even though it was rough and it's probably not the way it should have been, or I would say probably, it wasn't the way it should have been, it still gave me courage. So I stepped into the kitchen, and I remember to this day, still, like I said, my dad's on his knees, and my mother has a .38 pistol up to his head, and she said, "I'm gonna effing kill you," you know. And I'm gonna pull the trigger, and they're gonna have to bring a body bag. And I just remember my mom, and my mother was a nurse at this point, you know, and so, you know, she's using these words that I later understood, you know, like body bag. That I didn't understand at the time till later. So anyways, I don't know what made her not pull the trigger, because I saw the look in her eyes, and I thought for sure that she was just going to pull the trigger. You know, I don't know if it was just because of us kids or whatnot. And anyhow, I mean, a million stories like that growing up, for the most part, which sucks. But when that happened, we all left. We went to my grandfather's house for a couple nights, and then we came down here to Yuma, Arizona. I was barefooted, man. I was barefooted in my uncle's 1972 Ford 150 pickup truck. And it was 1989, I remember, because it was one of the worst floods that Yuma ever seen. You know, Sears building was falling down. I mean, it was just really bad. And but anyways, I get out the truck, and I'm at my aunt's house that moved down here. That was also my mom's sister from Missouri. And I didn't know I was lost. You know, I see all these different color people that I've never seen before in my life. Even you know, me being the age I'm at now, it just sounds like I was back in the 50s. It was just weird. And so anyways, I had a real hard time. I mean, even then, I had my newly found friends starting fights for me. And, I think one, like I said, I was in the 5th grade, so I ended the 4th grade, into the 5th grade here. And one kid had stopped me from walking home and pulled out a baseball bat. And, just come to find out that my cousins knew I learned some kind of, way to protect myself. And I think they just wanted to find out what I was capable of doing. And it wasn't until that exact moment that I realized that martial arts really works, the timing and the distance that my master at that point in time showed me through, meanness and anger and everything else, but it still taught me not to get hit by a baseball bat, Yeah. When I swung and he missed and I moved in and I just kind of, something just took over me. And that was kind of life-changing for me at that point. And then I moved on. I wanted to continue martial arts. And this weird guy just comes out of my mom's room one morning, and I didn't know what was going on. I was angry. I was upset, and I was like, who is this guy? Like, I'm the man of the house, at that time, because there was nobody else there.
Right.
No guy figure, And it ended up being a good thing because he had cousins in the martial arts that had actual schools here, distant cousins. But he didn't want to put me there because it was an aggressive form of art. It was just at the time, the people who taught it were too aggressive back in that time frame. And he's like, he knew just from seeing me, it's like he kind of read me a little bit, which was kind of special. I mean, a special guy. I mean, still an alcoholic, but different kind of alcoholic. And so he took me to Yuma Taekwondo. And that's how I started. And January 11th, 1989 was my first day at Yuma Taekwondo Center. Mm-hmm. But before that, it was December. It was December, I think it was the 21st. And I met Mr. Cobb, my instructor. And I walked in and he goes, come here, kid, and sit down, and he sits me down, and he had this mean bulldog face. He's a Vietnam veteran, and he looked like it. He looked like he's seen some things that I wouldn't have wanted to see, and done some things for sure. But he set me down, and he had a certain calm about him. I wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to a calmness. So I didn't know how to read it. I didn't know how to interpret it. So I listened, of course. I was like, oh, I'll sit down. He's mean looking, but he's nice. Something's going to happen. I knew that something's going to happen. He's too mean looking, too nice for something not to happen. But that was Taekwondo. And so when he asked me what I wanted to do, I remember telling him to this day, I want to learn how not to get hit. He was like, well, that'll come. That'll come, He goes, first you got to start. That's the thing. He goes, do you want to? I was like, yes. He goes, yes, what? I was like, yes. He looked at me, I says, sir? Because I did grow up with some common courtesy. My grandfather was a POW, Korea. He was a Marine. I mean, he was a mean dude, growing up with him. And those were always fun stories. But anyways, nonetheless, my Taekwondo adventure started on that moment, January 11, 1989, my very first class. I walked in, I seen him in the middle of the floor, and I seen a gentleman that I have there now, Mr. Tim, and I thought he was Chuck Norris. And I was like, whoa! At this point in time, I walked up, what's your name, sir? And it wasn't Chuck Norris. So it was so disappointing, yeah. But at the same time, it was still cool. I was like, this guy can kick, this guy can do this. And I'd see black belts in the corner, and they were going at it. They were jumping in the air, throwing kicks, hitting each other. And it was just amazing, no sparring gear. It was just amazing. And I thought, I want to do that. Those guys don't look like they're getting hurt. They don't look like they're getting beat up. So from that day forward, even as a white belt, I was looking and I tried to attach myself to these black belts because it's almost like I wanted to skip the line. I wanted to stop getting hurt now because I was getting hurt all the time. I remember walking down the hallway and mom turned around and just back fist me and split my lip open. And I didn't know why and I didn't know what I said, what did I do. But later on learning that it wasn't nothing I said, nothing I did. It was just that she didn't have any control in her life. And my dad, same thing. He didn't have any control in his life. And I felt like it made sense because one day, and I'm sitting there, it was probably about 2 months. I earned my yellow belt, and Mr. Cobb sits us all down. And I remember him saying to us, all of us students, he goes, what's the fourth tenet of Taekwondo? Man, we already knew it. We said it every day beginning in class. It's self-control. He goes, that's right, self-control. He goes, if you can't control yourself, he goes, you can't control anything else. And we were like, I was looking around going, that don't make no sense. I did. I was like, that don't make no sense. like, what do you mean if I can't control myself? I can control myself. I go to the bathroom when I need to go to the bathroom. Right. As a kid, I'm thinking, I have control. I didn't have any control. And that was the problem. So the problem was that having no control issue became my biggest challenge, because I would get angry. I would get really angry, man. Somebody would look at me wrong and I was yelling. But then, I got getting picked on and getting bullied because I didn't mix. I'm a white kid. And, I'm in a Hispanic town at the time, like I said, board town, you're at Yuma. Mm-hmm. And just didn't mix. So, everywhere I turned around, just felt like I was getting a hard time and I couldn't control myself at all. I'd go home and I'd break all kinds of crap, I'd go home, punch holes in the wall. I'd go home. I ended up putting a board on my tree and just beat the board until my knuckles would bleed. I just, there was just no control in my life at that point. So, but it was pretty crazy because at 16, so now from 10 to 16, doing Taekwondo, from 7 to 9 in Jiu-Jitsu. So I have quite a few years experience in martial arts at this point. And I know what it feels like to get hit, and I knew what it felt like to get kicked. But when I was green belt, my first sparring partner was my instructor. And green belt, you earn the privilege to spar finally. So I had to wait. It taught me patience. Every other school that I've seen since then, you walk in, they're fighting at white belt. The very beginning. And it's not that that's a bad thing. I think it's great. I think everybody's doing a great job. I think any kind of exercise is great exercise for the most part. But I felt like Taekwondo was there to teach not just me a lesson, but everybody a lesson. It taught us how to have patience, man. And if we didn't have patience, we just didn't win the race. So it was pretty crazy. But I remember feeling pretty quick. I'd hear black belts going, man, he's got fast kicks. And I was like, oh yeah, and I would really soak that in because I wasn't used to compliments, man. I was used to I was an SOB. I was used to being called other names other than my own. So for a long time, I didn't feel like my name. So if somebody called me David or Davey, I just ignore it because it wasn't SOB, it wasn't those things. So anyways, Mr. Cobbs was sitting in front of me. He goes, come here. I walked in this hallway. My mom couldn't afford sparring gear, or she could. She probably just didn't want to. I don't know. But at the same time, I didn't have any. So Mr. Cobb walks me to his closet, opens his closet up, and he goes, stand there. And he goes in this dark little room closet, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a glove flying at me. And he's like, did you catch it? Nope, catch this one. And he threw it at me, threw me out the other one. And next thing I know, I had gloves, I had feet, I had headgear. And he goes, that gear's to protect you. You're like, what? He goes, I'm wearing my gear to protect you too, that type of deal. And he has these big boxing gloves on, leather gloves, intimidating. And he lines me up and he goes, we're going to spar. And he's like, try to kick me as fast as you can. And I'm thinking, no way, man. Like, this guy's going to murder me, So he squares off. And in Taekwondo, we have a square off where we step back and we get in a fighting stance and we yell, key up, and we're key up, and he goes, go. And I didn't even get a move in. I think I twitched. That's about all I did. And I didn't know where it came from, but it felt like somebody hit me with this 50-pound bag of concrete in the gut. This is what it felt like. And I couldn't breathe. And I was like, it was a new feeling. And I was panicked. I was scared. And he was just so calm. Like for a kid that's dying. He just raises my hand and he's like, it'll be all right. Breathe, breathing. And eventually it was all right. So that built trust. Even though he hit me, I think it was for a lesson. Like, don't ever underestimate, you have to read things for what they truly are. Yeah. And at some point you got to get knocked down to get back up. And he taught me that. So, kind of emotional, right? But, yeah, dude. But it's just really awesome because after I sparred him, I was ready for anybody. I was like, dude, I sparred the baddest black belt. I didn't get nothing in, but I sparred the baddest man alive, and I survived. And I was unstoppable at that point, man. I was unstoppable at that point. And so at 16 years old, I remember going down the hallway. I don't remember what the argument was for, but I knew my mom was going to pay me a lesson. I knew my mom because she told me I'm getting the blank and belt. And I knew I was going to get it. But when she came out that hallway and she come marching down, like, I mean, she was on a mission. And I remember her throwing that belt over her shoulder, and it was going to come across my face because that's where it was going to go. You know, what comes up must come down, right? So I knew that it wasn't going to be good. And when she swung that belt, I grabbed it. I caught it. Like, I mean, I caught a grown woman that was strong. I mean, to me, the strongest woman I've ever met in my life. I've seen what she was capable of doing. I felt what she was capable of doing. And I grabbed that belt at 16. And I just looked at her and I just told her, I said, you're not going to hit me again. Ever. And I remember her looking at me and I was like, whoa. I just felt this look of anger, but it was also a look that I can explain today, that I took away the control that she had over my fear. And I thought, oh my God, I'm out. I moved out at 16. I was done. I walked out of my house. I said, you're not ever going to find me. You're not ever going to look for me because I'm not your kid. Like, nobody does this. So I left. That was pretty cool. But for me, that moment, that was a life-changing event for me, even though I didn't know where to go. I had so many bad influences in my life at that point in time. I ended up at a friend of my house that was a bad influence, very bad influence. And then I ended up with the guy I told you about, Chuck Norris. You know, he ended up giving me a place to stay, him and his wife. And it was really, really awesome of him to do that. But I mean, I had gone back for about 2 months because I was gone for about a year. Came back for a couple months. And I just told her, you're not going to help me. I mean, I'm done. You know, I came home because of this and that, and I was done, and I was out again. So, you know, almost 2 years. And after that, life settled, right? But I understood what Mr. Cobb, my instructor, was trying to teach me. You know, at later on, like in my 20s, you know, I was like 26, 27 when I finally started realizing all the things that he was telling me. And I had to control, you know, myself, because I was out of control. 27, I was still out of control. I think as a young dad, because I mean, as a young dad, which I was, I did all the mistakes. I did all the yelling. I did all the mistakes. Yeah, I mean, right? And it's just, and it's really a shame because, you know, I'm in my 40s now, and I look back and I go, man, you know what? Sometimes I go, man, I shouldn't even had kids, man. I think I messed up my own kids more than I messed up myself. But it wasn't the same as environment, you know, where you know, I mean, I wasn't causing split lips and broken bones, and I wasn't just causing those kind of things. So it was kind of scary. But at the same time, when I realized that I hadn't punched a wall in forever and I hadn't caused damage in forever, I realized that I actually had control. And that just opened my eyes. Going back at 16 a little bit, just kind of go backwards, I remember the second event in my life that made me realize that I didn't have to fight anymore as much as I was thinking I had to fight. I was sparring a grown man in Taekwondo class, and the guy's a big guy. Anyways, I know him, talk on Facebook every once in a while, but he got angry. I was kicking fast, and he got frustrated and angry. And this is the lesson he told me afterwards. But he came at me with anger, and I cracked 3 of his ribs. I don't know how. Like, I didn't feel like I used power. I didn't feel like I kicked hard. And it was just like, wow. He was gone for 2 months. He came back, and he was like, man, I slept on the couch for 2 months, man. He goes, I was in pain. I couldn't breathe. He cracked 3 of my ribs. He goes, but I didn't tell you that to feel bad, because I felt bad. I was like, man, I'm so sorry, man. He goes, no. He goes, don't feel bad. He goes, it was my fault. He goes, I was frustrated. I was angry. I came in at you. He goes, you did what you were supposed to do. And there it clicked. I did what I was supposed to do. I protected myself, because that's the instinct later on, right? As adults, we understand that there's going to possibly come a time where we have to protect ourselves. So what are we doing? You know, what are we doing? How are we prepared? How are we preparing ourselves? Yeah. You know, and because you're going to resort to what you know how to do at the end of the day. You're going to resort to swinging, you know, cursing, spitting, scratching, you know, if that's what you're used to doing. And if you learn martial arts, you know, like for instance, for me, if you learn Taekwondo, I feel like that taught me some space, time, distance, how to read a lot better than I could when I was younger, an individual, so I can at least have an option of escape before it happens. If I can stop a fight from happening, then that's what I'm going to do now, because to me, that's ultimate control, right? And that's a feel-good feeling if you can control yourself enough to where you don't have to protect yourself. That's a really good feeling. So Taekwondo helped me conquer all those bad feelings that I had as a kid growing up. Getting hit, because I knew that now I can pretty much control when I get hit and when I don't get hit. Training other individuals. I don't like getting hit. I think it's necessary for people to understand what it feels like, so they know. Gives people options, I guess. And a peace of mind, some self-confidence, some self-control. And go from there. But from a horrible beginning to, I think, one of the biggest blessings I have, like having you come in and tell me I'm amazing, having you come in and tell me thank you and you appreciate it. I guess hearing it from a meaningful way is empowering.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It really is. When you have somebody look at you and you know it and you feel it and you truly feel appreciated, it just makes you go, I got this one more day.
Yeah.
I got this one more year. I got this one more student. I got this one more time. So, man, the honor is really all mine. So I appreciate you.
Oh, you're welcome. As you were talking, somebody gave me an analogy. It's part of why it made me decide to go look for you. He's a martial arts person up in Utah. And he said, we have these challenges. We have these things that come at us. And it's not always. For most of us, we will never have to defend ourselves against the bad guy who's breaking into our house or whatever. Most people hopefully will never have to deal with that. But the other challenges, depression, addiction, anxiety, whatever, that they are the bad guy. And they come, and if you don't have the strategies, if you don't have the principles to know how to manage it, how to deflect it, to push back on it, it can be overwhelming and it can kick your butt. And so Taekwondo to me is like a metaphor for what we can do emotionally as well as physically. And there's beauty in learning how to do that with your body, learning how to do that because it's all connected. Being grounded in your body, being grounded in your heart, knowing that you have the ability to do it. It's that mind game that you talked about, knowing I can do that. If depression is coming at me, or anxiety is coming at me, or my addiction is coming at me, I know what I can do. I'm learning the skills to be able to do that so I can stand and defend myself and be grounded. So you're teaching me how to do that from a body perspective. I do that as a living from a mental perspective, but there's something about the incorporation of both of those that has been really blessed my life. And I know that you love doing it because you laugh and you have a huge smile on your face. And I'm like, dude, it's an honor to be able to work with you too. You were in law enforcement for a while.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
And then this is what you do all the time. What made you decide to leave a perfectly good job to go do this?
I think the risk definitely outweighs the reward sometimes. For me, it was an adrenaline, and I've always wanted to help people, obviously, because of the situation I was at. So, after a while, seeing that it was tearing apart my family too, because it really was. Me not being home was brutal. Yeah. Even though I like I had some really great accomplishments in law enforcement, I just felt like at the end of the day, it was really, I think you're talking about depression, and I think that's exactly what it started becoming to my family, and especially, my wife at the time. It was demanding, and she didn't understand it, and I really didn't understand it. I was just going with the punches, and I was so busy helping everybody else. I wasn't helping my own. And so when I decided to step away finally, it was when I got the opportunity to train the Marine Corps MPs. and for almost 8 years. And I thought, man, that gave me a little bit of both. That gave me a little taste of teaching and training, which I've always enjoyed doing. I've always felt like that was one of my main purposes in life, was to learn and hopefully teach what I learned. Well, Mr. Cobb was always preaching it. It's not about yourself. The world's bigger than you. And he was always telling us, the world's bigger than you. It's not about yourself, because you need to help everybody else. You need to put yourself aside sometimes, but don't be afraid to ask for help at the same time, type deal. So anyways, I love teaching. And so when I had an opportunity, and this was when he fell ill, I saw an opportunity. The school was closed down. Mr. Cobb was dying, and so when I talked to him before he died, I said, hey, man, I was like, school doesn't deserve to be shut down, sir. I was like, what do you think about me reopening? He goes, and I said, having you on my side, I don't care if I even have to pull you in a wheelchair, I'll do it. And he smiled, and that man never smiled. He never smiled, man. He smiled, and he goes, you know what? He goes, if there's going to be anybody, he goes, and I mean anybody, he goes, it's going to be you. So he had a belief in me that I didn't have at that time. This was 10 years ago. So this was July 18th, 2011, when I reopened the center finally, permanently. He had passed away in March. So I was like, a few months later, I ended up opening it up. I didn't expect him to pass away. I knew things were going bad, but I was hoping. I was holding on to hope, praying, and but hey, that's the way it was supposed to happen, So when I opened the school, it was seeing kids. I mean, nobody. My mom still at this point was, oh, you're out of your mind. What are you doing? You don't know how to run business. You're not going to do anything. I mean, the same way she told me I wasn't going to be a cop, or I wasn't going to do this, or I wasn't going to do that. So it wasn't to prove her wrong. It was just what I wanted to do. So kids started coming in there, and I started teaching, and you would see their faces. And after a few weeks, you would see so many changes, like with their mental stats, like what you're talking about, their physical ability and their mental ability, and what they were capable of doing just within a few weeks. And sure, I had parents complimenting, but I don't take compliments very well. If you probably already haven't noticed, I just don't. I seem confident, and I am confident in my abilities. And I hope they'll never ever be challenged again, and because I don't want that. But I know I'm going to stand tall at the end of the day. But I'm not able to take compliments very well. I shun those away. I'm like, whatever. I'm still the same SOB. I'm just an uglier SOB now. But seeing that difference, the reward to that was more than any dollar that can ever be given to me. The kid's like, whoa, like Mr. Perez, this kid locked me in. I had this, for instance, this 7-year-old kid. He's 6 at the time. He was so excited. Comes in, he's like, he's disappointed, but he's excited. And I tell you, I know he wants to say something to me. And mom's like, tell him, And she's behind there. She was kind of a pushover a little bit, but she's like, tell him. And he's like, whoo. And what he wanted to tell me is that he used what I taught him, not to fight. See, we learned the key up. The key up is intimidating, right? It can distract somebody from their thoughts or process long enough to get out of there, right? To escape maybe. And so he got trapped by 2 kids in the bathroom. Now this kid's 6 years old, man. Like, this is scary. I remember getting trapped in the bathroom when I was really young. And this is a scary thing. And he goes, Mr. Perez, he goes, I didn't think of anything else. I didn't know what to do. He goes, I yelled, yeah! And he goes, they jump back. And he goes, I ran. And so he used what I taught him. And that, I think, solidified, that confirmed that I needed to keep doing what I had to do. Yeah, man. So I just kept going, man. And so here we are, right? July 18th, 2011. Now we're in 2020. So it's an honor and pleasure.
Is there anything else that comes up for you as we're wrapping up that you think would be important for people who are maybe struggling with believing that they're not enough, or struggling with those core beliefs that I really am not worth anything, I don't matter, I'm powerless? Is there anything that you would want them to know and maybe even believe?
You know, everybody, I remember I started telling us one time, he goes, everybody's special. Everybody sees what they want to see, you know, and so did I for a long time. So I'd have to say that, you know, if you don't like where you're at, you know, change is around the corner. But you really have to put one step forward. And if you put one step forward, I'm going to put 2 steps forward. But when next time you look in the mirror, if somebody's ever doubting themselves and they see something ugly or they see something scarred, that's because that's what they've been told or that's what they truly believe. And I feel that you need to take control of yourself at that point. Stop listening to everybody else, you know, because everybody else isn't you, you know. And when you look in the mirror the next time, I will just think about what you really want to see. What do you want to see? You know, so when you look in the mirror and you think that you're ugly, then you become ugly, right? There's just this power that you have over yourself that most people think that other people are controlling it, or it's just my life, or it's bad luck, or it's juju, or, you know, whatever it may be going on in their life, maybe a certain event, right? But like anything else, at the end of the river is the end of the river, right? So you got to go through the process. If you hit a few rocks, you hit a few rocks. But like my instructor used to say, if you look down and you're bleeding, it tells you that you're still alive. If you look down and you see your blood, or you see yourself bleeding, you're still alive. So take that for what it is. But I'd have to say, if somebody's struggling for some kind of, you know, some reason that they're just not happy, they have the power, whether they want to think so or whether they want to believe it or not. And you know what? Nobody's ugly, right? Nobody. You can look in the mirror, you can have scars, you can have cuts. I got 28 below my eye. I mean, there's so many scars inside that I have. But if I go back to that point, then I'm asking for pain. I'm asking for punishment. Why? Right? We weren't born with our feet backwards. We were born with our feet forward. So go forward. Keep talking to people. If somebody doesn't want to listen, talk to somebody else. That's how I used to tell everybody. My instructor used to tell me, if the teacher doesn't want to listen, tell your parents. If the parents don't want to listen, tell me. If I don't want to listen, keep telling somebody. At some point, somebody's going to listen. Somebody is.
Yeah.
So just don't get discouraged. There's a millions and millions of people out there that you hadn't even tapped into yet. You know, so I think if somebody's struggling with a bad time, they need to understand, you know, that they're special. You know?
Yeah, I just came across an activity that I've started to do recently, which is to look myself in the eye in the mirror and say, I'm worthy of love and belonging. I'm enough. I matter. It's hard when I tell people to do that. They don't want to look themselves in the eye. The shame is so big. But that's what we're doing. We're challenging those beliefs that we've been carrying around since we were little kids. I'm ugly. I'm not wanted. We're telling ourselves. That's what I'm hoping people can understand. That's what I'm hoping the listeners can understand, is that you are enough. You're worthy of love and belonging. You have the skills, and if you don't know how to do something, go learn it. If you don't know and you want to, there's people out there who can teach you how to do the things you don't know how to do. It's part of the gift that we have on this planet. There's lots of people who know how to do lots of things. Thank you, David, for hanging out with me today.
Thank you, Troy. I appreciate it, man. I really do. This is pretty awesome.
You're welcome.
Thanks everybody for listening, that's for sure.
You've been listening to the Finding Peace podcast. If you loved the show or want to ask a question, let us know by going to troylove.com. There, you can also learn about the Finding Peace 5-Day Challenge. Remember to subscribe to this podcast so you won't miss the next episode. And if you are listening on iTunes, please give us a 5-star rating. It helps other people find this podcast more easily. Thank you for spending part of your journey with us. Copyright Finding Peace Consulting.